So, pre-movie, time for food. Movie starts in right about an hour, so yeah, and we are eating some good stuff. Check this out. So, food in the belly, not too much, because you want to stay awake for the movie. Also, not too much alcohol, if you are so inclined to drink. Super excited. It's freaking Star Wars. So, hopefully that little review I read this morning will not be enough to deter my enjoyment of the movie. And hopefully the movie will be fabulous anyway, so whoever wrote that little review will be proven wrong. Oh, cross some fingers. Here's to hoping, and then we'll get into reaction and then the actual review after this. So, just got done with Last Jedi, and whoever wrote that review that I read this morning there's a reason why I didn't remember who wrote it, because they didn't know what they were talking about. Wow. There was somebody crying at the end of the movie just now as we were leaving. There was a fanboy crying. That movie was epic. We will get right into this review, probably right now.
Quiet on the set, rolling.
Hi, I am Bitsy Telek.
Hey, I'm Hale Appleman.
I'm Walter Kane.
I'm Rene Aubergenois. Odo on Deep Space Nine.
Michael Dorn, Lieutenant Commander Worf, Star Trek The Next Generation.
Come and see me and hear me and talk to me and listen to me talk about myself.
Hey man, this is Kevin Smith, often considered generally nerdy, and you are listening to what is often considered generally nerdy.
On Generally Nerdy.
You're listening to
Generally Nerdy.
Generally nerdy.
Generally nerdy.
Hello nerds, thank you for watching Generally Nerdy. This is going to be super spoilerific review of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Intros aside, we have our plot summary. I'm gonna go back to the way I used to do this and do a read through of the plot summary and then just kind of give commentary as we're going through the summary. I'll touch on some casting stuff and then touch on some theories that may or may not have come true, or things that people are now theorizing because Last Jedi has come out. So, without further ado, let's get into these spoilers. All right. So, just starting from the beginning, and we're going from there. Resistance fighters, led by General Leia Organa, evacuate their main base as a First Order fleet reaches them. Poe Dameron leads an effective but costly counterattack. This scene, man, alright, so this movie, there's so many feels in this movie. This scene was super impactful. We don't know this bomber girl that sacrifices herself. She's on the last surviving bomber when they get over the top of this dreadnought, and just like everything goes wrong. It was so crazy, and then it goes just right, and she blows up, and you're in the feels, and it's wow. And then Poe gets back onto the ship to talk to Leia, and Leia's like, "You idiots! There are things going on that you don't understand, and we just lost all of our bombers for what?" Yeah, it was super powerful, and that kind of sets the tone for this whole movie. So just thank you Rian Johnson for this movie. Before I get any deeper into this, I loved this movie. I think this is exactly what we needed as far as Star Wars saga films go, and thank you Rian Johnson. All right, back to the synopsis. The Resistance vessels jump into hyperspace to escape, but the First Order gives pursuit using a tracking device. New tech for a new Star Wars. They can track them through hyperspace. They've never been able to do that before. They figured something else out. They allude to the fact that maybe it's not an actual tracker that they're tracking. Maybe there is somebody on board one of those vessels feeding them information. They don't really specify that as a tracker. They assume, the rebels assume it's a tracker when they are trying to figure out how they track them through hyperspace. But the guys, the Kylo and what's his name? Son of a General Hux. Man, words are not my forte. General Hux tells Supreme Leader Snoke that they have a tether on them. So that kind of, to me, implied that there was a mole on the rebel ship. I don't know that that's actually what happened, but that's kind of what I read when they said that. So yeah, continuing on. The Resistance jumps into hyperspace, but the First Order gives pursuit using a tracking device. During an attack, Leia's son, Kylo Ren, manages to destroy the Resistance fighters to leave the capital ships defenseless, but hesitates to fire at the lead Resistance ship after sensing his mother's presence on board. But TIE fighters destroy the bridge of the ship, killing many Resistance leaders. Leia, this was also the next super feely scene. Coming into this, they said they weren't going to kill her off in this movie. They said that she had a role to play into Episode 9, and then this happens. Leia saves her. She's out. All right, so it skips it in the synopsis. She gets blown up. She's in the bridge that gets blown to smithereens, and so she's floating out in space for a couple of minutes, and it zooms in on her, and everybody's like, oh, this is how they're gonna get rid of Leia, because Carrie Fisher's can't be in the next movie, and so maybe this is how they figured it out. But instead of withering like you would expect being in a vacuum, although their space physics kind of has always been iffy with Star Wars. But anyway, Leia's out there crystallizing, and then her eyes open, and she force wills herself back onto the ship. Oh my epic. Oh my gosh. Leia saves herself using the Force, but is incapacitated, leaving Vice Admiral Amelin Holdo in command. Disapproving of her passive strategy, Poe, Finn, and BB-8 and the mechanic Rose Tico embark on a secret plan to disable the tracking device. Another thing that they breeze over in that in this synopsis is that Finn was trying to abandon ship. Finn is a traitor. Finn, I don't know if he's a turncoat is probably more appropriate. I don't know that abandoning your position is. I don't know. I guess it gets treated as treason, so maybe. But he gets caught by Rose, and she thinks that he's being heroic, and something that he's doing right now is big and heroic, and then no, he's being a coward. He wants to run away from the fight so that he can ensure he and Rey are both safe in the coming future. That seems to be something of a theme in this movie, is that the guy plus Rey, or the guy wants to save Rey, and it's always a different guy. But all right, we're continuing on. Having arrived on Ahch-To with Chewbacca and R2-D2 aboard the Millennium Falcon, Rey meets Luke Skywalker. This is where we left off the first movie, literally the same shooting day, I believe, if I remember the production stills and such properly. Luke refuses to initiate her into the ways of the Force because of his past failure with teaching Kylo Ren, even after learning of Han Solo's death. Unbeknownst to Luke, Rey and Kylo began communicating with each other through visions. All right, this is super weird. I guess it was Snoke who did it, and we'll find that out later. But they see each other like they're in the same room. They start to talk back and forth, and like at first it's a little janky and like there's echoey stuff, but then they're having straight conversations after a certain point. And then we see that like Kylo's image is even projected into the room where Rey is sitting, and you are led to believe that the converse is also true, that the room Kylo's sitting in, Rey is being projected into, and the Force is connecting him. At least they think it's the Force. So, unbeknownst to Luke, prompted by R2, Luke eventually agrees to teach Rey. Luke and Kylo give Rey differing accounts of the incident that swayed Kylo towards the dark side, with Luke confessing that he contemplated killing Kylo upon discovering his corruption by Supreme Leader Snoke. This is another scene where you get all of the feels, man. So Luke says that he went to confront Kylo. He went to talk to him effectively about the rising dark side. And then Kylo's account of that night is that Luke came to kill him, and you see the rage in Luke's eyes, and Mark Hamill is fantastic in this movie because he's so versatile and back and forth. So Kylo sees what Luke did as trying to kill him because he has his lightsaber out, and this is where we get our new Hugh. This is one of the complaints I have with all of the pre-hype. Oh no, there's gonna be a new hue of lightsaber. No. It's going to be new to the sequels, not new to the universe. I was kind of disappointed with that, but I mean, it is Luke's green saber. So anyway, but Kylo's recollection is no. He wasn't coming to confront me. He was coming to kill me. And therefore also showing the failings of the Jedi. And then Luke finally confesses and was like, okay, so this is legit actually what happened. I didn't go to kill him. I also didn't really go to confront him. I didn't know what I was going there to do, and in a moment of weakness, I drew my saber. And then immediately I felt ashamed for my fear. And it just so happens that while the saber was drawn and he was battling with his fear, that Kylo woke up and then destroyed the Jedi Temple and took a handful of the Jedi in training with him, the Padawans with him, and then killed the rest and destroyed all of the temple. So, yeah, it's super, super heavy moment when Luke's like, all right, I'm gonna come clean now. Unable to convince Luke to join the Resistance, Rey leaves Ahch-To without him to confront Kylo. Luke sees the ghost of Yoda, who destroys the Ahch-To Jedi Temple for him and tells him that failure is the greatest teacher. Frank Oz comes back as Yoda. We have practical effects for Yoda again. Thank you, Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, because that's a lot of J.J. Oh man, it's such a great scene and so funny. Like, this is the thing about Star Wars, is everybody was complaining that there's too many jokes in the prequels. There's a lot of humorous moments, and even in Force Awakens, there's like, all right, so what's with all this humor? Like, it's a movie effectively for children. Granted, everyone loves it, and it is super deep, and there's a giant world to explore. It's not world necessarily, giant universe to explore with this, so that's really attractive to a lot of people. But brass tacks, it's a PG-rated movie, which means it's geared effectively towards kids, and then there's got to be something that keeps the parents there as well. That's where the depth and the humor comes in. The humor has to be appropriate for the kids, hence PG. Yoda, in this scene where the tree ignites and is destroyed, and And Luke's freaking out because those are the Jedi. The last of the Jedi text is inside this little hollow in the tree, and then Yoda's like, "Know them, she does. This is information that Rey already has. She's got it in her head." And then we find out later she's got more than just that in her head. Anyway, we'll get to that when we get to that part. And because I think that's something that a lot of people missed too. But yeah, failure is the greatest teacher, and Force ghosts. So we're reminded that Force ghosts are a thing. We're reminded that you can become one with the Force. And also on the island of Ahch-To, we're shown how powerful the Force is by those conversations that Rey and Kylo had. That's going to come into play later. And then she's really disappointed, and she thinks that because she has this weird connection with Kylo, that she can turn him and they can defeat Snoke together, because she saw his future when they touched hands. The last time they communicated this way is when we learned that Kylo's presence is being projected into the same room, and then also Rey's presence, we can assume, is being projected into the room that Kylo's in physically. So they touch hands, and she has a vision of his future, and then we find out he also has a vision of her future. Man. All right, so yeah, so that's what makes her believe that she can turn Kylo to the light side. So Luke won't help. He's turned himself off from the Force. He is shut off the Force inside his head. Rey has a moment where she's training and she learns how to see the Force, how to see with the Force, I guess is more appropriate. And she says, I saw all of these things, but I didn't see you. I got nothing from you, talking to Luke. And it's because he's cut himself off. That, too, is going to come into play with some of the fan theories that we're going to get to after this. All right, so Holdo, remember, that's the new commanding officer for the Rebels. She's got purple hair. She's being played by, let me find her name. I can't, Laura Dern, there we go. Laura Dern is playing Holdo. So Holdo reveals her plan to discreetly evacuate the remaining Resistance members using small transports. So Poe is getting pissed off. He has said, we're not to that point yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. But Poe's pissed off because she won't tell him what's going on, because he's just a flyboy, to use her words. He's quick to shoot, and he wants to just blow everything up and have at it. And he's the last thing they need, is, again, to use her words. So she reveals her plan to discreetly evacuate. Believing her actions to be cowardly and risky, Poe instigates a mutiny. And really, like, he is our new Han Solo, I feel like. Poe is our new Han. And this area of the movie is exactly why, because he's so charismatic and he makes you believe he's doing exactly what needs to happen. You are totally behind him this whole time, even though you know it's mutiny and he's gonna get in trouble for doing it. You're like, shh, do it, go for it, dude. That makes sense. Finn, Rose, and BB-8 have been shipped off at this point. So Poe finds a way to get them out of the shields without Admiral Holdo noticing. They're going to find a code breaker, I think is what they go looking for. They're going to find a code breaker. So they go where they get pointed to by, man, my words are just, that's why I print this. They communicate with Maz over some sort of communications. She's part of a battle just randomly because Maz is crazy. But she says, I know a codebreaker who can get you in. You'll find him on this planet, and he's wearing this pin. So that's where Finn and BB-8 and Rose are going, is to find this codebreaker. So Kylo finds out that they're abandoning ship, or Kylo, Lord. Poe is finding out that they're abandoning ship, and he's freaking out now because they're gone. Finn and Rose and BB-8 have left to find this codebreaker, so that they can get onto Snoke's ship, which is what's following the. We need to cover that real quick. So they come out of light speed, and they're tracked. And so they're just cruising along looking for a place because they have to find a place to set up their new headquarters. They need a planet so they can set this up. And they're in the middle of nowhere. There are no planets as far as they can see. And they're running out of fuel. So that's kind of a big plot device is Snoke's ship. And this is a little bit of a hole because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it makes sense when you're in the movie, you're having fun, enjoying it, and that's what's going on. So Snoke's ship and the big destroyers are projecting this big shield, and it only goes out so far. And that's like the extent of their accuracy range. They can't really fire past that. So the thing about that is what the rebels do is they speed up just so they're just outside of this ring of protection that Snoke's ship is effectively providing for the smaller ships. So they get just outside that, and then they keep at that speed. So apparently the Imperial ships cannot speed up just a little bit. They're either at this speed or they're going at hyperspeed. There's no in between, and that's a little weird. So that was kind of another little spot where it's like, suspension of disbelief is wearing thin. Because seriously, all they had to do was speed up an extra couple of parsecs a second, or whatever you want to say. However they monitor their speed in this universe, all they had to do was speed up a little bit, because effectively, this is Snoke, this is the Rebels. The Rebels are here, and they're both moving at exactly the same speed. So if we're doing this again, and imagine the ring of protection is here, so they're just outside it. All they had to do was speed up just a little bit more, because they've got all the fuel they can need. They've got everything that they could possibly imagine is necessary as far as fuel, at least. They're not running out of fuel, just the Rebels are running out of fuel. So, I mean, I'm sure the how it should have ended guys are going to hit that when they finally do the video for this. But anyway, so that's where we are. So Finn, Rose, and BB-8 are looking for the Codemaster. They go to Canto Bight is the name of the planet. It's a casino where they are told that this codebreaker is going to be. They find him, but just as they find him, they get arrested by the security on Canto Bight and put in jail, and they get put in jail with DJ. DJ is played by Guillermo del Toro is the director, Benicio del Toro is the actor. Benicio del Toro, who is brilliant in this, has this weird stutter that he affects very well. He is our kind of sort of Lando Calrissian in that he turns face, but we're gonna get to that in a minute too. Oh, talking so much and we're going so fast. So they find him, and they find out that he too is a codebreaker. They have basically lost all faith that they can get back to the codebreaker they were sent there to look for. Now they're trying to just get off of this planet so they can get back to the ship and say mission failed. They find DJ. He breaks them out of this jail and says, I can do what you need to do. And then they're like, nah. We're here for this guy. And then they lose, and then they break free too. And it's super heavy with the feels. Rose is from a planet where slavery exists, and so she was a slave, it sounded like. And she tended creatures where people bet on them, kind of like what's happening at this casino in certain areas. So she's getting all into it. Finn, Rose, and BB-8 recruit the pirate, so DJ, and computer hacker at a casino, believing that he would be able to help them disable the tracking device. So the tracking device that tracked them through hyperspace, at least that's what they think, because they figured that they still have to be tracking their beacon. They're only tracking from the lead ship. So it's this armada of Imperial ships, and they're tracking them from the lead ship. So they have to get on the lead ship and disable their tracking device, and then hit light speed, and then they'll get out of there. So yeah, we're up to date. It's a little kind of like this and like that, but it makes sense when you're in it. They infiltrate Snoke's ship, so they break it back through hyperspace. Finn is communicating with Poe. Poe's telling him they have to get back as soon as possible, and right before they get back is when the mutiny happens, so, you know, we're all caught up. Once that mutiny happens, and Leia comes out of her disabled state, she becomes conscious. She comes through the door because Finn has gone to the bridge and locked himself on the bridge. They cut through the door, and the smoke clears, and it's Leia, and Poe's like, oh god, thank you, somebody else with a brain, and then she blasts him. She stuns him, puts him out. They all get onto ships, and that's kind of where we are on there. And then Finn and them are traveling through hyperspace to get back in time. Rey is still traveling through hyperspace on the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca so that they can get back in time. And it's just this big rush to get onto Snoke's ship. So we're going through space, trying to get to Snoke's ship. Alright, so the first to hit Snoke's ship is it Rey? Yes, the first one to get to Snoke's ship is Rey. So Chewbacca's flying the Millennium Falcon. She gets into an eject pod, it looks like, and Chewbacca slows down just long enough to kick her out, and then he hits hyperspace and he stays just outside of range. With a communication device with Rey, although that's another thing, like, they're the First Order. They can sense that communication device, it would seem. So how is she going to communicate with Chewbacca and secretly? That's I don't know. That was another little hole. But she gets on. She kind of sneaks in with a couple other TIE fighters. And as soon as she opens up her escape pod on the bay of this ship, Kylo's standing there, and she gets arrested and taken straight to Snoke. So that's that. And now, by this point too, Poe has been blasted and put onto an escape pod, and the rebels are all on ships, and then Admiral Holdo has to stay on the main rebel ship because somebody has to steer it. Again, they have all this technology and no autopilot, but it's a good thing that she stayed on. We'll get to that in a second. So kind of iffy, whatever. And then going back to the Finn and Rose and BB-8 and DJ now get onto Snoke's ship just after Rey does, and they get to the spot where they need to go. DJ does what he says he's gonna do, opens up the door so that they can disable the thing. But little did they know, their little sneaking escapade didn't go over without being detected. Another little droid detected them, so they get ambushed as soon as they get into this room where the tracking device is, so they can't disable it. So it's just, when it rains, it pours. Also at about this time, Snoke is interrogating Rey, and he's super powerful. He barely gets off of his chair once, and that one time he only gets off long enough to be really powerful in Rey's face, and then he goes back and sits down and was like, I don't even need to do this. Kylo's gonna do all the work for me. And so when back to Finn and Rose and BB-8 and DJ, they turn around and stormtroopers come in behind them, and then lo and behold, we get Phasma again. And I don't understand They build Phasma up to be this really awesome, powerful woman, and we see her for a total of 8 minutes, approximately, between both movies. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, but really not much. Maybe it's up to 10. It might even be 11 or 12, but I would be surprised if it's more than 12 minutes of screen time for Gwendolyn Christie. So they're captured by Captain Phasma, though BB-8 somehow manages to escape. Meanwhile, Rey lands, and we've already covered that, takes her to Snoke. During confrontation with Snoke, Rey tries to turn Kylo to the side of the Resistance. She tries to convince Kylo that he's really good because he is so tormented. Snoke sees that he's so tormented and uses that to his advantage. Snoke reveals that he controlled the mental connection between her and Kylo as a part of a plan to destroy Luke. Ordered to kill Rey, Kylo starts to look like he's going to kill Rey, but then you see his hands twitching, and he takes power over the lightsaber that Rey brought with her, which was once Luke's, and it turns to Snoke, and he's holding his lightsaber at Rey, and Snoke's reading his mind, or he thinks he's reading his mind perfectly, but he's only reading it mostly because he's telling Rey what's going through Kylo's head. But in Kylo's head, there's no names associated. So he says, and now he's about to turn on his lightsaber and destroy his true enemy. He turns on the lightsaber sitting next to Snoke, not the lightsaber in his hand. And then chops Snoke in half. Now, this is the point where, in my head, I'm going, well, now there's going to be a million fan theories about who Snoke really was and how, and we're never going to know. A big thing with J.J. Abrams, and he's executive producing all 3 of these movies, and he directed the first, and he's directing the episode 9. Big thing with J.J. Abrams is leave them wanting more. Leave them guessing. Snoke is going to be one of those points where we're just trying to guess where he came from. And we're never going to get that information unless it's in a book that has nothing to do with Abrams. We're never going to get that information in a movie. We very well possibly could get it in a video game. I don't think that's super likely though. The most likely to me is if we get that information. That's a really big if. If we get that information, it's going to be in a book. A book could be comic or otherwise, because it seems that they're both about that kind of vehicle for Disney anymore. So we're never going to find out who Snoke is. Aside from the fact that he's freaking Snoke. We didn't know who the Emperor was in the Holy Trilogy. We had no background information on this character. He only existed in 2 movies. He was only in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. He wasn't in the first Star Wars. He wasn't in A New Hope, if you want to call it that. He wasn't in Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie. He was referenced in that movie, but he was only in those last 2 of the Holy Trilogy. So we didn't have any idea who that character was, aside from the fact that he was the big bad. So that's the role that Snoke is playing, is he's the big bad. So yeah, that's just something we're gonna have to deal with, internet. It's okay, I promise. Alright, so doodly-doo. Kylo instead kills Snoke, working together with Rey to kill Snoke's guards. Epic battle. Alright, so reading an interview with Mark Hamill before I saw the movie, he was saying how it's 2.5 hours long, but it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours long. And we know that at the end of every Star Wars movie, there's an epic lightsaber battle. I thought this was that epic lightsaber battle. Once Snoke dies, Snoke's Imperial Guards, the dudes in red, the big bads, try and take out Kylo and Rey, because Kylo just killed Snoke, so they have to kill Kylo back, because that's what guards do, right? So, epic battle. Rey and Kylo are just tearing them up, and it's not like they're cutting through them like paper. This is like a legit, hardly fought battle, and at the same time, actually no, right before Snoke dies, Snoke shows Rey that they have started to take out the evacuating ships. So, which means we have to go back a little bit more and talk about what's going on with the rebels. The rebels, now they have shown Poe where they're actually going. The actual plan that he was not privy to, there is an uncharted planet just off course that they can see, but is not in the star charts. So the First Order will not know where they're going, and they've cloaked all of their escape pods, so they won't see them. Now this is where all of the stories converge. As Finn and Rose are being dealt with because they got caught, DJ trades information. So he's given up the information of the where the rebels are going and how they're cloaking their ships. It's not made evident how he was given that information, how he came upon that information himself. He is a thief, though, so reasons. But he's given that information to Captain Phasma. Captain Phasma, in return, has put him in good standing with the First Order, given him a ship, given him money, given him clothes and weapons, and we see Finn and Rose are about to be executed as they find out that DJ is the one who turned on them. He gave them information. So that information then allowed the First Order to shoot out of the sky the ships that the rebels are on. So these escape pods are no longer cloaked because they have the cloaking frequency, I guess, is how that works. And they don't make it to the planet. There's a very small handful of the ships that actually end up making it to the planet. Now, other epic part and perfectly timed, as they're about to kill Snoke in the main chamber, Laura Dern's character, Admiral Holdo, turns the primary vessel. This, like I said, it's good that they didn't have automatic pilot, because this wouldn't have been able to happen if it had just been set to autopilot. Laura Dern takes and turns her vessel around because the First Order has changed their focus onto the escape pods. So the escape pods are being shot out of the sky. They're not shooting at the main vessel anymore. So she turns around, and with the remaining bit of fuel she has, she jumps into hyperspace and destroys all of those First Order ships. Super epic. Like, you were like, oh man, she's gonna die. And then, like, she goes out in such this fantastic fashion that you were like, whoa, hold up, this really just happened. And she seriously hits the first, like, it shows the trajectory. She hits the first ship, and then her ship effectively shatters and takes out basically the entire rest of this First Order fleet, and including a large portion of Snoke's ship. So everybody's going crazy and losing their minds and hitting escape pods and getting out of this place. And so the ship is coming down around them as they're battling Snoke's Imperial Guard, and that's also what saves Finn and Rose from their execution, because before Phasma can give the order to chop their heads off, the ship basically explodes. And then we get 2 seconds, it's like a minute and a half, of Captain Phasma with a broken helmet saying some horrible things to Finn, and how he's worthless or whatever, and then she falls and she's got a broken helmet, and so we can see Gwendolyn Christie's eye, and that's the most we get of Phasma in this movie, and it was whatever. Alright, so well, I don't even know where we are on this anymore now. Ordered to kill Rey, Kylo instead kills Snoke, and they kill the guards. Kylo invites Rey. Oh yeah, alright, so as all of this is going down, as all of the fires are burning and everyone's dying, and we get a couple of one-liners, and yes, again, it's an action movie. It's popcorn fodder. There is some depth to this. It is not like a Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s, but it is still a big budget action movie that has to appeal to a broad mass. There's going to be some silly one-liners. It's humor. doesn't detract from the depth of the story. It doesn't detract from us learning all of these things about the universe. It's just a funny moment. So take it as a funny moment, not that it's ruining your Star Wars. Dang it, internet. So after they defeat the guard and the ship is going down, Kylo is looking at the throne that Snoke was sitting on, and he is tempted and he wants to rule the galaxy. And to do that, he wants to take Rey with him. He's let the past die. All of these things, the Sith, the Jedi, dark side, light side, none of that matters anymore. And then we learn Rey's parentage. Rey's parents were nobody. Rey's parents were drunks who sold her to people who lived on Jakku so they could get drinking money, and then they abandoned her. And we're gonna get into theories about this in a second. I think this is the story. There's a theory that she could be born of an egg, so she's kind of an immaculate conception as well. But it's so much more effective if she just comes from trash and becomes this epic figure in this universe. So yeah, that's where we learn that Rey comes from nobody. And then Rey refuses to rule the galaxy with Kylo. Using the Force, she tries to grab Luke's old lightsaber that she's been using. At the same time, Kylo tries to grab it, and so they're locked in this struggle, and it tears in half. It's freaking awesome. So General Hux comes in afterwards because when it tears in half, it concusses both of them. They both fall to the ground, and that's the end of that. Next time we are in Snoke's Imperial room, the Force, like I said, it knocks them out. So Kylo is coming to, and Hux walks in and says, "What happened?" And Kylo blames the death of Snoke on Rey, and so Kylo exercises his power over Hux. Hux says, "Who are you to command my armies? Who are you? The supreme leader is dead." And then Kylo grabs him, Force choke, and Kylo says, "The supreme leader is dead." And then Hux says, "Long live the supreme leader." So Kylo takes power as supreme leader. Meanwhile, Leia, having recovered, stuns Poe. We've already covered that. Escape after defeat Captain Phasma. And then, alright, so Finn and Rose finally escape and join the survivors of the evacuation onto the planet that they were heading over to. When the First Order arrives, Poe, Finn, and Rose lead a charge with old speeders, but take heavy fire. So this is all of what we saw a lot of in the previews is the AT-ATs. With their like newer AT-ATs, but they're Kevin Smith calls them fat-ats because they move like a fat gorilla or something like that, which is pretty funny. But like they're on the planet, the surface is very white, but just underneath that white dusting is red. It's some sort of salt. It appears that it like oxidizes in the sun to become white, but is actually in essence red crystallized. Doodly doodly doo. Speeders but take heavy fire. Rey arrives in the Millennium Falcon and draws off the TIE fighters. So like the First Order, what's left of this bit of the First Order, because there were a couple of ships that did not get destroyed by Holdo, but what's left of the First Order, basically all of them come down to this planet to destroy and to capture these rebels, or kill these rebels. They hole up inside of this structure that's inside of a mountain. It's this giant metal door. Kind of looks like Hoth from the Holy Trilogy. And they mount the defensive, and just in the nick of time, because the TIE fighters are really what was taking out their speeders. TIE fighters taking out the speeders. Millennium Falcon comes in. Chewbacca's driving. Rey's shooting, just like Han and Luke in the Holy Trilogy. And Rey even says, I like this, or this is fun, or something along those lines. It's very similar to what Luke said, again, in the Holy Trilogy. They draw the TIE fighters away while Rose saves Finn from a suicide run because they brought this giant gun. So, like, the tip of my finger is the speeders, right? That's the size of the speeders right there. So they have a gun that's this big compared to this little speeder. This big versus this big. And that's what they're trying to take out because that thing's going to crack open their giant metal door. Poe learns, hey, I can't suffer too many casualties. It's suicide for us to stay out here. So Poe calls them all back. Finn doesn't listen, kind of pulls a Poe move, takes his communications off of his ear, and he's going to sacrifice himself and go Independence Day style right in the center of this big weapon. Just shoom! And Rose doesn't want him to die, so she takes her speeder and cuts him off at the pass, and then they crash, and yeah. So she saves him from suicide. Then the weapon is used as they know it's going to be, and they crack the hole in the side of the door so that the First Order can get in. And then, big epic, this is the final lightsaber battle of the movie. And when we got to this, I was like, okay, now we're getting to the end of the movie. Luke appears and confronts Kylo. So, again, they gloss over it so well in this summary. Luke appears, and the first thing you notice is this is not the same look that he had when we were back on Ancho, or whatever the name of that planet is. On Ankto. He looks different. He's got short hair, which, he can cut his hair, but his facial hair is not gray anymore. I mean, there's a little bit of sprinkling of gray in there, but by and large, it's dark. Likewise with his hair, it's no longer gray. So, did Luke color his hair to go fight Kylo Ren? That seems odd. So he comes into this base in which they have set up their defense, and talks to Leia, and it's this really poignant moment between brother and sister and how they missed each other and so on and so forth. And then he gets out and he walks out the front door, and the First Order's there to see him, and Kylo sees him and says, I want every weapon to fire on that man right now. And so every weapon that they have fires on that single spot. And it's like, well, yeah, I don't know how Luke's going to live out of that one, because there's no guarantee that Luke's going to be in Episode 9. There's never been any mention of that. Granted, they also didn't say that he was going to die in Episode 8, but they haven't said anything about him being in 9, so maybe he is going to die. So and then Hux looks over at Kylo and says, that's enough, and then they stop shooting. He says, are you happy now? And Kylo kind of has this look of relief, and then the dust clears, and it's this big epic red spot on the surface of this planet with Luke standing in the middle. So somehow he survived all of those weapons. And so Kylo goes out to fight him, and on one-on-one, and Luke's too fast for him, which is really awesome. The choreography for this is great. I really appreciated they played Luke in the choreography. I mean, obviously it wasn't Mark Hamill doing all of these stunts. There's a fair portion of them appeared to be CGI, but there are a couple of shots where it's obviously a master swordsman or something, stuntman guy at the very least, doing the tricks. But epic lightsaber battle, where the lightsabers surprisingly never touch. Watch it again. The lightsabers don't touch. So that's going on, and Finn and Poe are trying to figure out what they're going to do. All of the rebels are trying to figure out what they're going to do. And then they're like, well, there's got to be a back way out, because all of a sudden all the little creatures that lived in this cave are no longer in this cave, and how the heck did Luke get in here, and so on and so forth. So they're looking for a way out, because they're realizing Luke's not there to win the battle for them. Luke's there to be a distraction for them, so they can hightail it out the back. And then Rey and Chewie are trying to come in the back, but they can't find the back. They see the crazy crystal fox things, and then there's a wall and they can't get through it. But back to the lightsaber battle that's happening at the same time. Kylo and Luke are going at it, and Kylo's, oh man, so epic. Kylo finally runs Luke through, just slices him in half. And Luke turns around and nothing happens. So Kylo comes up and tries to put his lightsaber through his chest, and Luke just stands there and lets him do it. And he's a freaking hologram. He's projected himself just like Snoke had Kylo and Rey connected before. Luke has projected himself into this planet, and his last words to Kylo are, "See you around, kid," and then he disappears. And they finally have found their way out the back door because Rey has lifted these stones because now she has power. She knows how to wield the power of the Force. She is the last Jedi, effectively, hence the title. Because Luke trained her for 3 days. Granted, that it seems like she should have gotten a little bit more training than that. But if you think about it, Luke only got approximately 5 days of training with Yoda, and he's like the savior, so I'll allow it. Oh, another great thing, kind of rewinding back a little bit, speaking of Rey's training with a lightsaber, Snoke references my biggest issue with the last movie, that Kylo got defeated in battle by a girl who had never been trained in the ways of the Force, nor had she ever picked up a lightsaber. Thank you for the fan service, Rian Johnson. You rock. Anyway, Rey is the last Jedi. She's holding these rocks out of the way so that everyone can get out of the back door. They all get on the Millennium Falcon. Oh, man. Luke has this epic speech before he disappears. The remaining Resistance fighters escape from aboard the Falcon, and Leia reassures everyone that the rebellion has all that is needed to rise again because all of their distress signals went unanswered, but people know that they stood up to the First Order and won with a very small handful of ships, very small handful of people. So, and then right before credits roll, we go back to Canto Bright, where the gambling was and all these things, and there's these kids who are, we assume they're slaves, and they are cleaning up effectively after all of these creatures that they were racing got let out by Finn and Rose. We're back there, and it's this little kid who kind of looks like Anakin, and there's a couple other kids, and they're telling the story of what happened on that planet, where Luke came in and stood in front of these AT-ATs or AT-ATs, and they're telling this story in this different language, and there's no subtitles. It's just you hear him say Luke Skywalker, and then you notice that the toys that they've made resemble the AT-ATs and Luke, and then their master comes in and starts yelling, so they all scramble and go start cleaning things. And this one little kid who kind of looks like Anakin steps out the door and grabs a broom, but he doesn't grab the broom. He force wills it over to his hand because it's just outside of his reach, and starts sweeping and looks up to the stars, and credits roll. Oh my god, so awesome. All right, I love this movie. Now, theories. Rey was not Luke's daughter. Rey was not Leia's daughter. Rey was just a nobody. And that's the point, because anybody can be a hero. That's the message of this story. Snoke is not Darth Plagueis. If that were the case, he would not be dead so easily. Although somebody has made reference that the music playing when they're in Snoke's chambers very much resembles the music that plays when they reference Darth Plagueis in the prequels. So take with that what you will. Also, what are other fan theories? Finn is not the child of Lando Calrissian. Finn is also a nobody. I don't know. Are there other theories that you have heard? Let me know about them in the comment section below. Most of them are silly. And some of them are kind of, I mean, like, I can see some logic behind them. The film theorist has some pretty interesting theories about the Star Wars universe that make sense, but by and large, they're giving us all of the things. There's very little that, and that's kind of a little bit of a qualm I have as well, is they're spoon feeding us a lot of this stuff. Not all of it. Like I said, we will never know who Snoke was. That will never be a piece of information that's given out in a movie. And we will never know exactly who Rey's parents were, because they're no one, and that's the point. Anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you for watching through to the end of this movie. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. The website is www.generallynerdy.net. The Patreon, patreon.com/generallynerdy. You can find all of the social media stuff on one of those two places. Definitely hit up that Patreon and support what I'm trying to do here. Just $1 a month is the minimum support. Be fantastic. I can start doing these with a lot more regularity and get myself some better equipment to do them on. Anyway, thank you guys again for watching. What did you think of Star Wars: The Last Jedi? Let's talk in the comments down below, and I will talk at you later. But don't go. I do have to remind you always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.